and welcome to another episode of The Meta. I'm your host, Jay Larson, and joining me this week is the man, the myth, the legend, Aaron Wale. Hello, Aaron.
Hello, Jay. How are you doing?
I am well. What about you?
Going very well. Yes, that's interesting times. It's good times. Obviously, it's been quite some time since I was fortunate enough to be a guest on this show, so a lot has happened between then and now, and so hopefully we're all coming into better times. And obviously, the announcement from Privateer Press almost about a month ago with the new dynamic update has been pretty exciting, and then just our little community, and I'm sure other places as well. It's good that we can kind of start playing games in real life again and get back into our hobby that we've loved and part of those communities, and moving on to some good times.
So, for the listeners at home who have a gaping void in their life because they don't know who Aaron Wale is, can you go ahead and introduce yourself to those people?
I can. So, probably from my accent, I am Australian. I live in Hobart, Tasmania. I've started playing War Machine back in 2011. My first faction was Trolls. I played Trolls for a little bit, and then before I started to play competitively, I moved over and started to play Cryx, and have played Cryx ever since. It's the only faction I own. I ended up selling my Troll models. And yeah, I've been playing Cryx competitively for probably since 2012 or thereabouts, and have been fortunate enough to be on a winning WTC team in 2018. Came close for the Iron Gauntlet a couple of times in 2017 and 18. Won some bigger tournaments along the way, and come second quite a few other ones as well. And yes, I've been playing for quite a while.
All right, well, we can, I guess, go ahead and dive into the listener questions and get your knowledge about Cryx.
Sounds good.
So first question is from Joe G. He says, why should we be running out and buying Cryx armies post-update?
I feel that might be a slightly loaded question. For people like me who thankfully did not have to run out and buy a Cryx army. No, it's a very good question. To put it in context, the update I believe was very good for Cryx. I think they probably had one of the most number of models that were changed, even though majority of those changes were points adjustments. So the initial impression, I think, is a little dampened by everyone's kind of in the same boat. But definitely, I think post-update just allows some more creativity, some more options you can put in Cryx lists. Their play style is still very much the same, very much a melee-centric type army. But for me, my biggest attraction to the list, was kind of the aesthetics and the theme, and a bit of the fluff of the army. Obviously, I love the models. But yeah, I think it's a matter of, if you're always drawn to Cryx, I think it's made us competitive now. Not to say that we weren't completely out of the game post update, but I think just the disparity between factions now has become a lot closer again post update. Cryx definitely is not on top of the list by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel that we generally are competitive against every other faction out there currently in the game. And there were a couple of little exciting updates, particularly models that I'd played in the past that I very much liked. Things like Soul Hunters, I think the change to Soul Hunters were good. Some of the points reductions on some of the heavies were good. And then some of the cute little adjustments to casters and whatnot. But yeah, I suppose for me too, to probably couple that in, is that because of the global pandemic and haven't been able to play War Machine definitely in real life or serious competitively, it's certainly been a bit of a void. So it's a good time to be getting back in and playing the game. And some communities, obviously, I think will have to probably go through a bit of a reset, rebuild phase. But I think it's definitely a good time to do it. And if you've ever wanted to play Cryx, I think now's the time to either bring those models back out or jump back onto the bandwagon.
All right, so our next question is from James Moops Morehouse. He says, Big Well, they say you either win or you learn. Do you have a single game of War Machine that sticks out to you as one you've learned the most from? P.S. There was a joke in there about saying you must have learned a lot, but I won't make it because I'm a big boy these days.
Yes. Good question, I suppose. Yeah, there's plenty along the way. What's a good question? What's a good way to answer that question, James? If he's referring back to the 2015 WTC when I activated my Bane thralls twice in the sense of playing Epic Asphyxius, and obviously pretty new to the competitive scene, or relatively new to the competitive scene, and obviously a pretty big stage event, and obviously made a mistake there, which ultimately, unfortunately, probably cost me that game. But also, I mean, I suppose it's all a bit of a blur along the way. You think of some pretty big moments that I've played and pretty good games. Some of them are still on YouTube. You can go and watch. I think the game is always a continual evolution. I mean, I played a game recently where I just completely the brain switched off and I just put my caster in the wrong position and died the top of two. It's just one of those things where that's, as I said, mentally, I think that's why I still love the game. It's still a good challenge. And I mean, the biggest driver for me is obviously the social side and the element, but then there's also the competitive side. And when I say competitive against yourself and, trying to always do better. But I mean, we're all human. Sometimes, more than not, you can just have a bit of a concentration lapse and you obviously lose a game, and then upon reflection, there's been plenty of games where I've had wonderful turns where I think I've done so well, particularly thinking of things like P. Scar and P. Denny, where, you can have a pretty amazing feat turn, but you force your opponent into a situation where the only way they can win the game is kill your caster. And for me, probably more times than not, that seems to happen. So, yeah, that's probably the best way to answer that question.
One thing that this made me think of, this question, was a quote from one of the books that I read, like a novel called Ender's Game, and one of the teachers is teaching one of his pupils, and they're playing a game versus each other, and he says there is no teacher but the enemy. No one but the enemy will tell you what the enemy is going to do. No one but the enemy will ever teach you how to destroy and conquer. Only the enemy shows you where you are weak. Only the enemy tells you where he is strong. But yeah, I mean, I think that there's one of the things that's really important for having proper mindset towards the game, in my opinion, is having a focus on learning and improving your abilities and making correct decisions and proper plays, as opposed to being focused on winning. Your win percentage will increase if you focus on those other things, but if you focus too much on winning, then you can end up having a lot of kind of secondary issues that happen that are negative because of that.
Absolutely. And I think, we've all had our own little journeys over the years, and playing it playing the game and thinking about it, and just different people I've come across along the way. I think that's really important in terms of, what do you want to get out of the game, and so on and so forth. And I know obviously a lot of people focus on the result, and maybe because it's, they're trying to get recognition or, be noticed and whatnot. But also too, coming back to basics too. I mean, it's a game. Game's supposed to be fun. I mean, people can say, well, it's easy if you win all the time, but the reality is people don't win all the time. But absolutely, if you can able to. I mean, sometimes I can talk from the heart here. There's been plenty of games where you lose and it's been so close. Maybe a dice roll or a positioning has gone wrong, or you've forgotten an activation, or so on and so forth. And when you live through that, it can be quite frustrating and disappointing and all those emotions. But if you're able to work past that in time, and then have a true reflection on what happened and try to analyze it and get some good feedback from good players or people that you played against, and you can analyze things and then take those lessons, learn those lessons from that. As you touched on, that's definitely how you can make some pretty big improvements. And I know that I've done that definitely over the years and continue to do that. Very blessed with some of the wonderful people that I play the game with and very close friends of mine and very good players of the game. And that's certainly, in order to assist you to become a good player is to kind of play against those best players, and we can positively collaborate and we can all learn, and it's, for me, it's a fun exercise. It's, I've certainly had plenty of salty moments, and certainly, spat the dummy plenty of times, and want to take my bat and ball and go home. But over the years, you kind of mature a little bit more, and you you develop some resiliency and maturity. And I think it's if you're able to do that, that's how you get better, and that's how you learn. And then the most important thing too is that if you're able to pass that on and help other people, that's how you build the community, and that's how everyone gets better, and then ultimately it contributes to help leading to more success.
All right, so next question is from Zap Brannigan. He says, what do you recommend picking up for someone picking up Cryx?
Sorry, say that again.
Basically, what do you recommend someone buys when
for
they
starting
are...
Cryx?
Yep.
It's a very good question, and I think I saw some other questions here talking about for new players to come into the game. It's I don't want to sound too negative, but I think, that's, we've had these conversations over the years lots and lots of times about the entry of the game, and because of its complexity and its variety and so on and so forth, it's still quite a significant challenge. And sorry, just to go on a little bit of a tangent here, but kind of answering the question as well, but a bit of a blanket answer. It's that's still, I think that challenge still remains. And I think a good start for Cryx, as always, is going to be that battle box, because I think that's a pretty cool element of kind of teaching you how to play the game, particularly if you get a group of people coming in who are kind of new. You pick up those battle boxes. I know obviously they're quite a few dated now, but to get the mechanics and working out and understanding how to play the game in terms of the focus or fury system, and then the basic rules, and then building on that, I think they've made the changes to all factions with the battle box casters. For Cryx's point of view, Agathea, I think they've made the rules quite competitive, so that they're not too overpowered, but they're quite good casters and they're quite dynamic. And then I think, obviously, depending on what your aesthetics are and what you like to play and what draws you to, then you can kind of use that as a platform and then start branching off into different areas. So for her, obviously, I think it leads to her, getting a unit of Banes, probably Bane Knights or Bane Thralls, and then that might then lead into, obviously, starting a Dark Host list, and then moving to different variants of the game from maybe from a battle box game to a 15, 25, 35 point game, and then obviously branching out there. And then I think once you're able to do that and kind of get the concepts of that, then you'll get a better understanding about kind of what some of the rules interactions, and then some of it's hard for a new player to look at the suite of rules and understand what a model is and if it's any good, and I think you really need to understand the basics of the game, the mechanics, the rules, and then once you're comfortable with that and you're okay with that, then you can start to then move into more creative list building and then play styles depending on what play style you want and what kind of models that you want to play, and go from there.
All right, so next question from Zap Brannigan. He says, Ghost Pirates versus Living Pirates. Who is best? Who is your favorite? And who is your least favorite?
Ghost Pirates for sure. I think the recursion mechanic is strong, and they obviously brought back the old Ghost Fleet rules where they had point blank. There was playing that list for a long period of time, and going back to when it was quite popular back in 2016, 2017. And then seeing the changes, obviously, to bring it down. And then it's quite funny and ironic how you come full circle and then they've kind of reinstated it to what it was. I do own every model in the faction, so I do have units of Living Pirates. But I think just natively, because of the way the themes are, and there's obviously the dedicated list for the Ghost Pirates, and I think the benefits for Ghost Fleet even take it to the next level. And the Living Pirates are competing in a theme where there's a lot of other interesting units of living models in that theme. So I think they probably at this stage is probably a little overshadowed.
So next set of questions is from Zemo is Cool.
Mm-hmm.
He says, first off, if you're going to a tournament today, what would be your list?
I'm going to a tournament today. I still very much love Piscar, and I know people might, their initial impression is potentially thinking, the blunt force trauma that she is. But the lists that I've been building have some interesting play, and it's, I'm not going to lie or try to tell you a story that's not there. I mean, obviously the power of the feat is still very strong, and the list and the models that you take in there and how you try to deliver them, but it's the other elements of the list that in order, because the game's so complex now that it's not just a matter of me to be able to, come up and just feat and, win the game. The curve and the way that other models can hit now and their other defensive buffs, in order for her to be effective, I think you really need to be able to get a considerable amount of work done in your offensive element of your feat, getting the +5 strength, and then to also enable the +5 armor in the feat to +5 armor in the feat to be sufficient as well. I mean, going back in the day, you could even in some cases just have a completely defensive feat and still been able to out attrition and win the game. But things have evolved now and things hit harder and as I alluded to before, some things are a lot stronger now. Sorry, a lot more durable now. So her evolution of play over the years is to the point where, and then you play this interesting game where, your opponent obviously knows what you're trying to achieve as well. They're trying to neutralize or minimize, those opportunities in order for you to feed and get work done offensively and protect their counter-punching pieces. So when you do feat, that they can obviously still manage to do some work and kill some of your models on that feat turn. But a lot of fun. I love Scar 3. She's lots and lots of fun. And Rahira as well. And Gaucher 2, there's some really awesome Gaucher 2 lists that work really well, and Scabrous. So at the moment, I'm kind of blessed for choice in terms of a lot of different choices. It really comes down to, I suppose, of those, what the pair is and what I'm trying to play against. Sorry, what I'm trying to mitigate. So just to jump in there a little deeper, Piscar, playing her in Slaughter Fleet is great, but they obviously don't want to see a very strong gun line. So if I'm going to choose that list, then I've got to think about what I'm going to pair it with. Just to clarify in terms of the right now, I did not back the Kickstarter, so I don't have access to Kachev 2, but if I did, slightly going out of the scope of the question, if I had access to Kachev 2, I'd probably play maybe a Scar 1, Scar 3, Kachev 2 pair. But because I don't right now, it'd probably be maybe a Scar 1, Scar 3 or a Scar 1 Gorshade 2 in Black Industries kind of pair. I think that would be what I'd be taking right now if I was going to a tournament today.
Next question from Zemo. He says, with those lists, what are you looking to drop each of your lists into?
Well, I think the Gorshade list doesn't want to see too much anti-magic and doesn't want to see removed from play because of his feet. And the Scar list obviously doesn't want to see a lot of guns. The Scar 3 list is she's a bit of an all-comers kind of list because I think she has obviously with her spell list has some immunity to some mitigation to guns and with deceleration, but I've also got her playing that in Slaughter Fleet as well. I think Slaughter Fleet's the best list for Scar 3, mainly because of the living models and the recursion and the abilities that she has and some of the rules that she has. But I think they're all pretty much kind of all-comers lists. There's obviously some hard counters. Legion, Isle of Sight, some pretty high-powered guns hurt the Scar 1 list, and I think Menoth or any general RFP, which there's a bit. There's still obviously prevalence of RFP. Pardon me, things like Grimkin and other bits and pieces probably don't want to play Gorshade 2 into because the list is all about attrition, trading intelligently, and then having a feat turn, and then having enough resources to kind of close out the game. And if that Kachev list, he's obviously great because it's just an anchor. He's such a bully, and I don't think too many gun lists want to see them. If you combine himself with inflictors and Black Industries, I think it's a bit of a miserable time for a bit of a gun line. So I think he comes out and anchors the list pairing quite well. And in saying that, he can play well into other matchups as well. It's not purely just your anti-gun kind of list. And then so there's plenty of good options there. And then I think for just some other outliers, I really like Agathea. I've got a pretty cool list with her. I've got a few cool lists with her, depending on which way you want to go. I mean, even Sturgis too, with the updates, is kind of interesting as well. I think he's got some play style. I think he probably runs Dark Host, probably one of the best as well. It's at this stage it's a little hard as well too, because obviously we only just seen the one major War Machine weekend event, and I know there's another big event in Poland that we've been seeing in person. I've been playing a lot on War Table, but I haven't done anything competitive in War Table. But it's kind of still fresh, as I said. It was about a month ago that update came. So the meta, there's some pretty strong outliers, I think, initially, particularly Circle, I think ended up pretty well. I still think Red's pretty good. Kato's pretty strong. But waiting to see kind of what the meta shakes out to be, and then kind of some kind of clear threats that we can build against. But I think that's one of the benefits of Cryx being such a deep faction that it is. It's you're probably not going to have the silver bullet for everyone, but I think you've got some, like there's a lot of playability and there's a lot of options there that you can try to think about, countering things. And I think there's still some cool options there where you can try to get ahead of the bell curve and try to get some cool kind of lists and some innovation happening where you can kind of make the list matchup process in your favor as well.
All right, so next question from Zemo is cool. He says, are there any factions or lists that you want to see, or any that you do not want to see?
Sure. I think, I'm not sure. I know James and I have been playing a lot of games, and Jack's been playing a lot of games too, and we were just recently talking about it. I think I'll be interested to see where Chromac 1 falls, Bestial particularly. It's a pretty hard spell on most of Cryx lists. Not all, but a lot of them. It's kind of a really good catch to kind of get a lot of that stuff. It's just that playing around that spell and kind of what your list is designed to do. But I think at this stage it's probably a bit too raw to kind of know what the kind of meta is doing and what's happening, because there were definitely plenty of lists in the past that you didn't want to see. But a lot of that has changed. So it's hard. It's hard to see kind of where things have shaked up and where they're at. I hope I'm not being facetious, but I really think that, most of my lists have got some pretty good play into most of the game at this stage. As I said before, no silver bullets, but, if you get someone who's a pretty good player, who's pretty experienced and gets a bit of luck, I think we have game into pretty much everything in the current meta. Well, sorry, of the current factions at this stage. We'll see until maybe when the meta shakes a bit more out, just to see what if there's any boogeymen out there that we might need to then start seriously thinking about and adjusting for.
All right, so final question from Zemo is cool. He says, did Baratheon really need to lose 2 points? Not that I'm complaining, smiley face.
Well, I mean, that could be said for a lot of things too. I mean, he's not the only one within the faction, but he's also not the only one in the game. Just a side note, and yes, I am very salty about it, just because I think I'm a fanboy and I just love Nightmare, but I was a bit disappointed that Nightmare didn't get seen too. I think I mean, I suppose, in a nutshell, no, probably Baratheon didn't need to get dropped, and some people could argue for Cryptus as well as Eberus and Malice and all those other characters. But the fact that it has, and the fact that everyone else has as well, you look at all the other characters and they've all, not all, but a majority of them also got a drop. It's definitely a strong win for Cryx, absolutely. He's a wonderful Jack, and him being 13 points. And for those that were playing the game when it first came out, if we cast our minds back, remember when he was first spoiled? Way back when we used to get books and he first came out. I remember looking at this bottle and going like, wow, like, like his premise was awesome, and his fluff and stuff was awesome, and he had some kind of cute rules. But I think he was, it's going to sound horrible, but a glorified seether. And I can't even remember what the points cost you used to pay for him when he first came out. And I think it was like towards the end of Mark II, if I remember. That's how long it was when he first came out. And I looked at this thing going, wow. And hasn't he certainly evolved to something that's amazing that what in the edition that he is right now? So he's a big win for the faction. I mean, he was always extremely strong, but just that extra 2 points just makes it, just all that bit sweeter.
All right, so next we have Dragon Pup. He says, what lists / casters do you think have shown the greatest improvement within Cryx?
I think, as I said, I very much like Gaucher 2. I think he's very good. I very much like Rhaenyra. I'm still toying it out because I've got this really awesome list in Ghost Fleet. Sorry, not Ghost Fleet. Pardon me. In Scourge that has 2 Krakens. Rhaenyra with 2 Krakens, and I've been playing it for a while now, and I remember probably when I was last on the meta, I might have been talking about it. But just with this reduction in points, if I can just share a story of, I remember building lists, 2-3 years ago, literally, and I'd be probably maybe a little salty, maybe, and looking at the points cost of a Kraken and looking at some of the other colossals, and then looking at some of the other points cost of things, and I would be building lists and just trying to make it work and thinking about the points, and then look at this post update, and ironically, I actually still had that list in my phone from like 3.5 years ago, or 3 years ago, whenever it was. And the irony was, you look at it post update, and I'm like, oh my God, I can fit everything in that I wanted to fit in. Plus I can fit in, another like 3 points or something. It's like, this is amazing. Like, I used to have this wish list of this fun list I wanted to play, but it was always something like, 7 or 8 points over the limit. And you look at it now and it's like, oh, it's like 3 points under the limit. Like, this is amazing. And so I've been playing that a little bit, and it's a lot of fun. I'm not sure how super competitive it is, because you've got obviously the 2 Krakens and the element of having a colossal that has to do so much work to get its points back. But just I love her rules interactions with, Black Spot, the fact that she goes and does some work and then comes back. Having her feat is interesting too, with the iteration of the army, and like even just trying to get the maximum work out of the feat is kind of cool. Rough seas, where it doesn't just completely mitigate against gun lines, but it means that they really do have to come into the threat range of those Krakens. If they want to shoot you, the Kraken can just sit back and do a lot of work with its big gun. I've plenty of traps where I've tried to come up and do work with a little gun and basically had things charged and killed. So buyer beware. It's mainly to sit back at that 16 inches and keep working. Sometimes it struggles on scenario. You've got to be mindful of the scenario. You can get closed out and bad things can happen there. But yeah, it's really cool to play, and I just love the Kraken. Always been a massive fan of it for such a long time. Post update down to 32 points. So I think it's really well costed. So that was definitely a big winner. I also the changes to Agathia were, her herself was before this update came, but now dropping the update, I think, depending on what list you want to play, having those Bane Knights to be able to take it in any theme kind of gives the flexibility. I've been playing a lot with her in Black Industry, so it kind of helps, because I think the Bane Knights, particularly her henchmen, are just amazing. But getting the benefits of the Black Industry theme, I think, is quite good. I mean, she's also serviceable in Dark Host as well. I think I've talked about 3 times. If haven't people hinted, I love Gaucher 2 and the changes that have happened with Gaucher 2, and particularly Soul Hunters. And I've always loved playing those. And again, playing that in Black Industries, I think that's a pretty good theme. I think Mirage and Occultation is really powerful on him. There's a lot of cute play, and I think it works really well. I've got like a couple of variants of my Scar 3 list now. Traditionally, if people remember when I was playing, particularly in the WTC 2018, I had all those trolls, which I still love. They got cheaper, and so you get more pieces in the list. But then with Blood Witches, and I've got a variant that has Blood Witches and Cephalix Overlords, which all got cheaper as well. So you can have lots of cool things in those models, and her interactions like Blood Witches and Cephalix Overlords with dash is really cool. Blood Witches with Draconic Blessing hit really hard. They've got Grievous Wounds. You can obviously recur back all those models. There's lots of cool winners within the faction. I suppose, and to be fair, I'm not I haven't really, touched on some of the old casters and things like, Venethrax or Terminus and it's not that I don't think those guys have played. Don't get me wrong. It's just in this last couple of months, that's just kind of where my focus has been. Definitely, it's going to be an ongoing journey, and because we've got 20 something casters, it's going to take a while to kind of, get your head around all those things. And there is a fair bit of kind of, there's a fair bit of crossover in some of them. Like I think Venethrax and Khachev too, in some ways are kind of, competing in the same kind of space. And I think there's some good play there for Denegra 2. I think Denegra 2 is kind of cool. There's some interesting elements there, obviously with her feed incorporeal. She's got a great spell list. Same with Denny 3. Honestly, there's so much there to kind of really reprocess and go back through and see, what what your kind of play style is and whatnot, and the caster can clearly define that. There's obviously a lot of similar elements to it, but yeah, I mean, the changes that were made makes our whole faction. You've got to kind of unlock. Assuming, let's say, we unlocked it before in terms of these are good, these are playable, these are competitive. You kind of got to hit that reset button and kind of go through that math again. I mean, some of those elements didn't change in terms of what their flat rules were, but just some of the points differences. Maybe if I can get more of these things, in the past, it's like, oh, these guys are okay, but they're just not value for money in terms of their points. But now that they're reduced, and I can take maybe 2 units as opposed to 1, or I can take this unit and then this supporting unit, or it really is exciting time to go through and kind of analyze and look at what's happening, and a special mention to Scavros too. I love Scavros, and I think he's a pretty good caster as well. And I'm having a lot of fun, kind of playing him and reintroducing him back into the meta as well. I think TK is a great spell. Crow's Cutthroat's still the same. That's probably, the heart of the list. And then depending on what theme you want to play and, what you want to exploit, then, depending on what your play style is, you've got plenty of options to go down that path.
All right. So next question from Dragon Pup. He says, how do you feel about Cryx's place in the wider meta after the update?
I think, touched on it before, the disparity between all factions now has become a lot closer. And that, might purely be just the fact that things are new. And so, maybe in some time, some outliers or the existing outliers may still be those outliers. And I know that the general feeling of the points reduction, if you just look at it in isolation of your faction, you think it's amazing. But if you look at it in everyone else's, like a holistic view, then well, hey, everyone else kind of got a bit of a points drop here as well. I think some of the changes to the requisition points is worth mentioning too, that I didn't probably touch on before, is pretty significant. I think majority of the Cryx themes can still get some pretty good value for requisition points. So particularly Black Industries, if you go down the Mechanothrol, you still get the 3 brutes, which is quite powerful. There's a lot of great 5-point solo options or units options in Scourge. You still get the 6 points pretty much consistently within Ghost Fleet and Dark Host. Tartarus, I think, is always going to be there, and then you can look at potentially a 5 or a 4-point requisition point if you're taking a Bane Knight officer or a Bane Thrall officer in Standard. So, I mean, that's pretty significant, I think, in terms of, I think we get some very good value for requisition points. And also, too, I just think the significant points reduction in a lot of the Cryx, either Jacks, even like, the fact that the Reaper came down and the Inflictor come down, are quite significant, is, I think, we are in a pretty good spot where I would honestly classify us as still in the middle of the pack per se, but the highest and the lowest is, well, in some cases, I think it's really probably you could throw a blanket over majority of the field, and there's only probably a couple of factions that I think are probably at this stage probably just above the bell curve. I think Circle is definitely one of those, and that's mainly because of the changes to their living beast. I think they're living, and more so the fact that, and the introduction to probably Kruger Zero, but just their output, the fact that they can hit really hard, which is not per se, it's not an issue. It's just the way the game's evolved. I don't want to sound like I'm salty towards that, but you can see how the game's evolved where, Circle's play style was they kind of always wanted to do that. They love hitting you. They don't like getting hit themselves. But yeah, just the fact that the points have gone down a little bit and their numbers have kind of gone up a bit too is just, I think, puts them in a really good place. I still think Cato are very strong. They've got some great casters like Cryx, and they've got some great units and some pretty good themes as well. But yeah, I think, we're certainly, just to rehash what I've said a couple of times, is that the disparity between all the factions now, I think, are a lot closer. And also it's kind of new in terms of, seeing where the meta shakes out and where people think, when these new lists or these new ideas or these new play styles are going to start to evolve and we're going to start to see things. So at this stage, I think we're sitting pretty good. I'm extremely happy. Honestly, I think if I took myself away from Cryx and just some of the, looking at all the other factions and whatnot, I wouldn't be disheartened or dispirited if I was, and talking to people in my local community and the greater Australian community and the greater world community as well. I don't think there's anyone that's really totally upset. Maybe with the exception of Signar, they're probably a little disappointed. But apart from them, I think everyone thinks that they've got a fairly good shot and they're in a similar type situation.
A follow-up question with Dragon Pup. He says, do you think that the update was enough for Cryx?
Yes, definitely. Enough for Cryx for me to be inspired and want to play games. Also hand in hand, obviously, with the current state of the pandemic and things, particularly in Australia, moving to a phase where we can start doing more things in person and travel and whatnot. And particularly me in Hobart, where 15th of December we're going to open our borders, so more things are going to happen there. Absolutely. I mean, to be fair, and I couldn't think of my term before, but I've remembered it now. Don't want to sound like I'm looking things through rose-coloured glasses, but I still think we had elements that we could do and play before. I was just probably felt that there was a limited scope for me to be really competitive. Now I think that has grown by the different viable options that we have in our faction. So yes, pardon me. I would be happy to, if we were going to the WTC, next week, I feel confident that I could take a list and be competitive and be a valued member of my team moving forward. If I was going to a solo event, the same thing as well. I'd be more than happy to be going to Lock and Load next week, or if I was fortunate enough to get over for obviously just missed it, but War Machine weekend or Welfare weekend, or if I was going to CanCon or any big event anywhere, I'd be keen to take my models and give myself a shot going over there and playing. Absolutely.
This will probably be our last question of this episode, and you've already touched on this a little bit, but final question from Dragon Pup. He says, favorite casters regardless of competitiveness?
Yeah, just to rehash, at the moment I think I just love Rahira, love Gorshed too, and love Scabrous, just because they just do there's a couple of little different dynamic type play. That's probably my favourite ones at the moment, where you kind of, you've just got some different tools where you can think about playing things. And I mean, they're probably, Rahira's a bit different, but you think of maybe a little bit of a comparison between Telekinesis and Abyssal Gate. So there's a little bit of play style about, trying to move people's models and do things differently, and Scabrous definitely likes the whole idea of kind of shaving away and not giving much up. Gorshay's probably more just about trading intelligently and just seeing how things go. And as I said before, here is I remember talking about her when I was on the show a long time ago. I thought she was great, and just the playstyle was great, and just touching on it again, the fact that I can build my list that I always wanted to build, and it's actually legitimate. I don't know, it just makes me excited to play it and get the reps in and the fun stuff that it can do, and having those double colossals too, having them both on the table is pretty exciting. So
all right, I guess before we leave the free episode, is there anything you want to say to the wider audience about the game or Cryx?
Absolutely. As I said, I'm just excited. I think the anticipation to come back. There was a big announcement for the WTC. They're trying to, which is looking solid. We can go back to compete in the WTC in 2022, which will be exciting. And mate, it's been 2 years since I've been able to see you in real life, so I'm pretty excited about next year to be able to travel and hopefully reignite with the community, the global community, and some of those really lovely friends and experiences, and play games again and get out and also I don't want to take anything away from like a newer generation of people that play. It's only been a couple of years, but I'm sure there's some new faces and some people who I'd love to just be able to socialise with and just share those experiences and play some games and have a lot of fun. So it's just me personally. Our lives, from work and personal life and things still ticking along and everything else, but it's certainly just been a bit of a void for me of just not being able to get over that. I mean, there's obviously you, Jay, and my other family, and I mean, I consider you guys all my family too. Haven't been able to see you guys for over 2 years, and in real life, obviously, we've been talking constantly and all the time we're chatting, which I very much dear love. But it's exciting times for hopefully things to change and some positivity and being able to travel and being able to play games and hang out and have fun.
Awesome. I completely agree, and I'm looking forward to finally getting to see you in person again.
Indeed.
All right. Well, as always, check out discountgamesinc.com for your gaming needs, and support the Patreon, and you'll be able to listen to the bonus episode where Aaron Wale will impart even more wisdom to us. And
looking forward to it. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Finally, thank you, Aaron, for sharing your time and getting up early and making this all possible.
Absolute pleasure. I look forward to talking to you shortly for episode 2.
Awesome.